Milwaukee. Since its founding, untold numbers of people have lived and died in this city by the lake. No one can be sure what happens after death, but some believe it possible that a person could leave a trace of themselves behind, whether through a fond memory or unfinished business. Join us as we explore a few such reported incidents and talk with the people who are connected to them in Haunted Milwaukee. Noah Lee is the founder of Paranormal Investigators of Milwaukee. He came to speak with us at the Honey Creek Cemetery in West Allis.
Paranormal Investigators of Milwaukee is a group that investigates claims of paranormal activity at personal homes and businesses as well as public locations. And we use a combination of science and sentience to try and do this. Our emphasis is on equipment use and scientific method, and we do not charge anything for what we do. I started the group because I always had an interest in the paranormal. I didn't really have an outlet for that interest when I was growing up. I thought it was necessary to start my own group because from what I saw out there wasn't a lot of people, using scientific method, using scientific equipment, and knowing why or how it's supposed to be used. And I thought by using my scientific training that I had gotten in school, that I could, bring something that was lacking in the field. We get cases from all over, and we go to locations all over the state of Wisconsin and northern Illinois. We will do an initial interview where we call them up on the phone, and we have a questionnaire basically that we give them. And the questionnaire goes over a number of things, mental health, drug and alcohol use, as well as the specifics about the activity that they think they're experiencing. And this helps us be able to know what sort of situation that we're going into, because we are going into people's homes. So there's a safety factor we have to be concerned about. But after that initial interview, we determine if we need to do a walkthrough. And if that is done, then we'll set up a time to meet with the client, as we call them. And we go for about an hour, hour and a half, and we walk through the location. They would take some baseline readings at that time, EMF, temperature, humidity, and we'll do interviews of firsthand accounts of activity so they can tell us in their own words exactly what happened in as much detail as possible. And then we utilize that information to determine if we actually need to do an investigation at the location or if we just need to give them a little bit of counseling, a little bit of information, and have them document the case for another 2 weeks to a month to see if the activity increases or not. So there's a number of parameters that we document during our investigation and also during the initial interview, because there's two reasons. One, there's a theory that ghosts or spirits or whatever the paranormal might be is needing to use energy from the environment in order for them to create an electronic voice phenomena or to manifest or move something. The other reason is because there are certain parameters that can actually affect how humans perceive things and make them think they're actually experiencing paranormal activity when they're not. So the main things we look at are EMF, which is electromagnetic fields or frequencies, and we look at that for the main reason actually is because people are affected by it. It can make them hallucinate, it can make them physically ill, make them feel like they're being watched. And so it's important that we know what the baseline is of EMF, because a lot of times we go into locations and the places where all the activity is occurring is actually where the highest EMF is at. Other common things are environmental factors such as temperature. Cold spots and drops in temperature have been reported for over a century when it comes to paranormal activity.
Allison Jornlin is a paranormal researcher and hosts the website MilwaukeeGhosts.com.
Well, I've always been interested in the paranormal and in history and folklore, so I thought something important to do would be to document those things in Milwaukee, since this is my hometown and this is where I've chosen to spend my life. It just seemed like a natural thing to, since there weren't really any sites out there devoted to just Milwaukee ghost stories, that I start a website called MilwaukeeGhosts.com. And the purpose of that website is to collect stories from the Milwaukee metro area. The idea of that is so that we don't lose these stories. So that's the historical aspect, where there's many stories that were documented in old newspapers. The stories are largely forgotten, and I think it's important to bring those back.
Allison and I have known each other for a couple years. We originally got in contact because she runs the Third Ward tours downtown, and she was looking for a paranormal group in the city that she could work with, because she came across a number of people on her tour who had things going on, and she wanted somebody to be able to look into them for them, as well as business owners who maybe wanted an investigation to be done. And that isn't her expertise. Her expertise is in history. She's a great historian, and she's very useful in our investigations, sometimes being able to dig up history about locations that we wouldn't be able to find ourselves.
One of the areas of the city I've really been fascinated with is the area around Wisconsin Avenue, which I call Milwaukee's haunted Main Street. Now there's so many haunts, the Pfister, of course, the Pabst Mansion, the Ambassador Hotel, the Rave, and the Brumder Mansion. So there's so many places that are reported to be haunted along Wisconsin Avenue. So one of my favorites, of course, is the Milwaukee Public Museum, and because they have a haunting that has been going on, according to witnesses, for some 40 years, since the death of their former director, Stefan Borhage. Some people have compared him to Indiana Jones, or Milwaukee's Indiana Jones, because he would travel all around the world collecting antiquities and artifacts and bring them back to Milwaukee, and always had a great story about his travels. He was known to smoke a pipe and wear a cape during the winter instead of wearing a regular winter coat. And upon meeting a lady, he was very dashing and would reach down and kiss her hand. He went out of this world way too early in a tragic car accident on September 26th, 1969. He was on his way to the museum to start another work day and just never made it. But some people say that he never left because certainly there was a lot of strange activity after his death that continues to today. Spoke to one of the curators there at Milwaukee Public Museum, and she told me her personal ghost story, which involved walking down a corridor on the third floor. She just was frozen in her tracks because she felt this chilling pressure, just like freeze her to the bone as it passed through her body. And she had never felt anything like that. She just stood there shaking. And when she broke down and finally told other colleagues about it there at the museum, they just kind of laughed it off and said that was nothing new, that a lot of them had experienced this, and even visitors had experienced this kind of practical joke that maybe Borhage was pulling from the other side. He's also been seen on numerous occasions by security guards as a dark figure who sweeps through the third floor in a cape and then disappears, sometimes laughing. Sometimes if they don't see him or hear him, they will still smell his pipe smoke.
The Riverside Theater in downtown Milwaukee has had many reports of ghostly activity. Susan Scott Fry of Caper Company Tours fills us in.
Well, the Riverside Theater's got a wonderful, long history. It opened in 1928. It was a vaudeville house and saw some amazing people right off the bat when they were first getting going with their vaudeville careers. People like Bob Hope, Judy Garland, Gypsy Rose Lee, they all played here. Unfortunately, by the time the Riverside opened in '28, vaudeville was slowly on its way out. So they started doing other things here as well and started struggling like a theater does, but it ended up being a movie house. It hosted plays. Now, of course, it's doing very, very well, hosting big concerts and big names. But it went through a lot of turmoil before it finally hit its stride, the stride that it's hitting right now. Caper Company Tours is all about ghost stories. I've always loved ghost stories ever since I was a little kid. I just love them. Not necessarily that I believed in ghosts, but my mind is open to any kind of possibility, and it was really all about the stories for me. My love for ghost stories is what, of course, built Caper Company Tours as a ghost tour company, and also what brought me in contact with the folks with Pabst. And of course, Pabst runs the Riverside Theater, specifically with my buddy Jason.
I met Susan Scott Fry about It's coming up on 2 years ago. I met her through Cindy Moran at the Rep, across the hall from the Pabst. Mutual friend, great person, very interested in the paranormal. I was telling her some of the stories of the Riverside, and she's like, I have a friend that you need to meet. She does ghost tours. So I was like, oh boy, all right, here we go.
Mutual friend introduced us. This mutual friend knew what I was working on and also knew that Jason had worked here in the Pabst for a number of years and had had his own odd experiences, his own paranormal experiences here. So we met up, we got to talking, he started telling me some of his stories, and I was enthralled.
So Susan and I built our friendship out of ghosts, I guess.
Between the two of us, we quickly came to the conclusion that there would be other people that would enjoy hearing these stories and getting a chance to walk through the beautiful Riverside Theater and go in places that you just don't normally get a chance to go to. Sitting here on the stage, going down in the basement, going up in the light booth. There are so many stories, so many wonderful stories.
The first experience I ever had at the Riverside was when I was locking up for the evening. I was the last one in the building, had my dog PJ with me. I was leaving the building, walking up on the stage, going to turn off all the lights, set the alarm, and heard someone whisper in my ear, "Hey." And it startled me a little bit, but it startled me, it startled my dog, who was basically paralyzed in fear. I had to pick him up and carry him out of the theater because he was so scared.
Of course, once Jason started telling me his stories, other people who worked for the Pabst or worked for Riverside or had in the past or still were came forward and said, "Wow, you're talking about ghost stories? Well, you know, I had this funny thing happen to me and I've never told anybody about it." So it just started snowballing.
A lot of people have had issues with the lighting room, and apparently, in the 1930s, a projectionist died in there, had a massive heart attack. A lot of the claims are about the lighting booth are that it's a prankster ghost where you turn off the light, you come down to the stage and the light's back on. But when you climb all the way back up to the top of the stairs, the light's off. But then when you come back down to the back to the stage, the light's back on. So, interesting stuff.
Now, because so many people have come forward with their stories and they have an opportunity to tell someone who's not going to think that they're insane, we have gathered so many stories about the Riverside that we can't even include them all on the tour.
It's a wild thing, you know, to be talking about, you know, ghosts going through these halls and different stories that I keep hearing, and to have someone come in that is so honest as she is and kind of takes it in kind of an unfiltered way. Frankly, it's been surprising to me how many people have been so fascinated with these tours and came through, and a lot of people are interested about it, and I think it's only growing.
A gal by the name of Dixie told me her story about the stage. She and a friend that also works here were working here on the stage. They just needed to carry a ladder from one side of the stage to the other. And they picked the ladder up and they were moving, and they were about halfway across the stage when they both stopped, because they both heard very distinctly footsteps walking across the boards of the stage. One of the things that made it even more unusual, besides out of the blue and hearing this very distinct sound, an identifiable sound, was that it didn't sound like it was happening actually down by their feet. It sounded to them like it was happening about 5 feet higher in the air. Later on, I did discover that in 1966, the stage and a lot of the curtains burned. And it was a massive disaster that was very difficult to recover from. But the stage, when the original stage deck was built, it was about 5 feet higher. So just a wonderful coincidence to discover some of that history, and then having heard her story and being able to possibly put 2 and 2 together, maybe.
It's done, Susan does her job in a very, it's not fantasized in any way, and it's not romanticized or anything like that. It's not blown out of proportion. It's just, it's stated as, here are these facts, this is what happened, and what do you think about that?
Noah Lee of Paranormal Investigators in Milwaukee has been in the Riverside about 4 times now. Every time they've been in the theater, they have captured some kind of EVP, or their sensitives have captured feelings in the room, which actually match up with some of the stories and the claims of this building. Very interesting stuff. Noah and his team, very professional team, a good friend now, I would say.
Noah showed us a few of the tools he uses in the paranormal investigator trade.
So we use a lot of different equipment on our investigations. A lot of the stuff is used to monitor the environment and the energy in the environment, and some of the stuff we use is actually designed to capture the evidence. So I'll start with what I have here in the case, which we use to capture the evidence. This is a digital audio recorder. There are many different kinds. What we do is some of these we'll carry around with us when we're doing EVP or electronic voice phenomena sessions. Other ones we'll leave and let sit in locations during the investigation so that if something is captured when we're not there, then we have a record of that. So this is one of the things we use. The better the quality of the recorder, the type of the wave file that it can record in, the better the quality of the microphones, the better quality audio we get, and it's easier to find evidence that way. The other things I have here are things that are used to monitor the energy in the environment. This is an EMF detector, and so we go around with this and we try to find the man-made EMF that might be at a location, so one, we can see if that's affecting the people who are experiencing the activity, and then 2, we can monitor that during the investigation to see if there's any fluctuations while we're investigating. Another thing we use, this is a weather station, so this we always monitor the outside weather conditions as well as the inside ones. So this can do wind speed and barometric pressure, humidity, and temperature. Temperature is important in the paranormal field because of the cold spots people think that they may be experiencing during activity, so we want to make sure we can keep track of those. These last 2 devices are specific. This one was actually designed for paranormal investigation. This is an EM pump, or electric magnetic field pump. The theory behind the use of this is actually if you provide a field for, or an energy source, if you will, for an entity to use, then it will be more apt to have activity happen. This also operates in such a way to be like a siren, something that would attract attention to it, and so that's why we use this. So this last piece I have here is a geophone. It's actually something that detects vibration. So if you have it on a surface here like this, you can see the LED lights light up when the vibration is detected. And this is something that we use if there's like phantom footsteps reported, or if we think we're hearing footsteps, we can see there's actually being vibration generated by that or not.
The historic Pfister Hotel is another Milwaukee landmark famous for its apparitions. Allison explains.
That's an interesting one because there's kind of 2 sides to the haunting. It used to be that people would report seeing the ghost of the hotel's founder, Charles Pfister, in the ballroom on the grand staircase, looking down, kind of enforcing the hospitality of the hotel. So people would report seeing him all over the place, in the halls, even walking his dog. They've also seen him on the elevator. So that's kind of this kindly, portly ghost that is seen. But then, starting in about 2001, Major League Baseball players started to report something altogether different, where players have reported anything from hearing like scratching down the walls, to their lights going on and off, to the TV channel changing, or the TV going off entirely, the heater going on and off, just things of an electrical nature. Also, the players have reported seeing a skeletal type figure. At least one player that I know of was very, very upset, according to the accounts of his team members, who said that the next day he had to go meet with the team chaplain. So it's a little bit different when you're a baseball player and you go to the Pfister. Expect a rough night. And then also the Brumder Mansion is a great place to check out. It's a bed and breakfast now, but certainly there's a lot of activity that's been reported there.
Well, the Brumder Mansion was built by a prominent citizen of Milwaukee, George Brumder Sr., who made his who worked really hard and made his money from publishing German music, newspapers, and books. And he built it for his son, George Jr. And he sold it to a man named Sam Pick, who was an entrepreneur. He was a businessman, and his specialty was setting up nightclubs. Like any good businessman, they set up a private speakeasy for high rollers in the basement, ballroom basement of this house. And it was a fun place. Everybody came and they drank and had a little show, and they did gambling and other things that go along with any mob operation. 5 or 6 owners later, in 1948, 49, the church next door was the South Milwaukee Lutheran Church, and they had so many people. They decided they wanted to be more of a central church, so they came up here and they bought this whole block. They made this house into a parsonage for their pastor, and they had Sunday school classrooms over here, and they had all kinds of activities in the front lawn, and the roof was in bad shape, and the straw that broke the camel's back was all the pipes broke, and there was no heat. And then Carol and Bob Hershey came along, and they were looking for a new house to renovate, because they lived to restore old houses. We were on a road trip in the Midwest to get pictures for our websites, and we fell in love with the place, so we decided to buy it, and we're glad we did. Yeah. When we first bought the house, it was pretty quiet for 6 months, and then little things started to happen, and especially on the 3rd floor, our staff was, if they like you, they have a tendency to tease you, and so one particular staff member kept getting the plug pulled out when he was trying to vacuum, or little bangs, you know, and another staff member, when he was vacuuming, you'd see a shadow run from one room to the other room, and, you know, they're getting kind of, you know, nervous about that. The ballroom is a interesting place. It was the ultimate man cave for a long time, you know, and a lot of good times were had down there during the speakeasy days. We were thinking that some of Sam's crew was still down there helping out, and they became really active when we put in the 1920s bar. But the Gold Room is a very nice, very peaceful room, but it, you know, has some spirits that like to hang out in there sometimes too, like Suzanne and Elizabeth, and I think a little girl named Sarah, who's about 5 years old. But it's a very peaceful room. People enjoy that room very much. It's done in the arts and crafts. Has the original fireplace in it. It's been our experience that all the spirits that are in here, they're here because they love the place. They have great memories. It was a very positive, happy place, and they're just not quite ready to give that up yet. And so some of them are here for that. Others are here because they have to work something out. I don't know.
Despite their interest in the paranormal, not everyone is convinced that ghosts are real.
Well, you know, we do a lot of debunking in the field, and we try to determine normal explanations for a lot of what we come across, and a lot of it can be pointed to AC, HVAC issues, electrical and plumbing. But I have seen some things which I couldn't explain.
You know, I am skeptical. I'm very, very excited about ghost stories. I would love to believe, that's why I always stay at haunted places when I visit different areas of the country, because if there is something to it, I'd like to have my own experience.
I'm extremely skeptical of it. I'm a total skeptic as far as whether it's real or what. I mean, it's totally wild to me to think of that other side of our life, that there's actually other people that are, you know, dead per se, or undead.
One time I was going to the restroom on the 3rd floor. Door was closed. Washing my hands after I used the restroom, and the door opens and the door closes. This was at 9 a.m. in the morning. I was the only person in the building. So, like any other person would do, I said, "What the hell was that?" and opened the door, and then saw a dark shadow dart across the wall into the theater. Was it my own shadow? No, it wasn't my own shadow. I tried debunking it, of course, like any Ghost Hunter fan would.
It bothers me a little bit as far as the ridicule goes, and maybe not being taken as seriously as I would hope, just because you know, those people don't take the time to really find out how we go about things. You know, they take the cheesiest thing. You know, Ghostbusters movie is the first one. Usually start humming or singing that theme. Ask me where my proton pack is. But really, other than that, I just wish people would think a little bit more and maybe ask me some serious questions so I could tell them, this is how we go about it. We're not screwing around. We really try to use as much science that we can in the field to make sure that what we're doing is going to be transferable to science as much as possible.
Whether ghosts actually exist is a matter of debate, but there may be much to be learned from exploring those avenues.
Well, I just want people to know that it's a very safe place to come. It's still a very warm and welcoming bed and breakfast and our events, and because the spirits here are very happy and they don't hurt anybody, and they're just here because they love the house and they're part of the house, and so it's how we look at them.
Well, I would tell people that there's some really interesting stories out there. There's some fascinating history, and it's time that we look into everything that Milwaukee has to offer and to celebrate our local folklore. Many different communities are doing this, and there's nothing negative about it. As I mentioned before, I think Milwaukee really deserves legendary status, but for that to happen, we have to start talking about some of our legends. So I hope that everyone will join with me and celebrate local folklore.